Come on. All right, moving. So I was right. I'll be taking apologies down in the comments below for all the people who said that you could just fill up the tunnels with water. All right, Hamas has gotten a ceasefire deal. At the end of the day, I think people let the politics of it all get in the way of what the military situation was going to be like with war tunnels. No military in the world understands how to deal with them. And I'm going to talk about what happened this year with drones specifically that could defeat them, but that idea was not taken up by the Israeli military. So how did Israel deal with this threat the last year? Well, I know a couple fighters that were down there working in the Gaza Strip and working in elsewhere areas down in Israel, and they had said that they would strike the entrances to these tunnels, which I said was not going to be enough, and it's not their fault. There was no way to defeat them at that time. And when they did need to go and strike deep into the tunnel networks, maybe like command rooms or whatever, they would have to spend 20 JDAMs. What's up, buddy?
They're still bombing.
They're still bombing. All right, get inside. Just like they did with Nasrallah, they got him. He was in a tunnel like 200 feet deep, but it took 20 JDAMs digging a hole in order to get him inside his bunker. It works, okay, but they can't do that for every freaking insurgent. When I was in Iraq, we had a tunnel system, at least our personal one, just for our team, 4 people, that probably altogether stretched a couple hundred meters, maybe a kilometer. And we had one room in it that all of us would be in that was heavily reinforced with concrete and as well as metal bars and just a lot of different things in order to avoid getting killed by an airstrike, which it worked, by the way. Nobody was injured when they did strike directly on top. It was only about 6 feet of ground above their heads. But yeah, what I'm saying is that they couldn't do this with all the fighters. Now, obviously, Hamas was fighting among the populace. Maybe not all these soldiers were living in the tunnels, but if they're actively deployed and being used as soldiers, I guarantee you, most of them were working from the tunnels. What can Israel do about this? What can militaries around the world do about this right now? Fiber optic drones. This was something that happened the last year, so we weren't able to talk about it back then, but it's existed, being used by Russians and Ukrainians for the last about 6 months. People are widely regarding it as one of the best innovations of FPVs since. Because a spool that's about 3 kilometers in length only costs about $600. This costs nothing. It still keeps the price of these down. So here's a bomber FPV that I made. I made a couple videos on it recently on my channel. You can go ahead and take a look at me dropping bombs from this thing. But the ones I'm specifically talking about that would be good is maybe droppers like this coming in via fiber optic cable. That way it doesn't get jammed. You know, like the reason they want to use fiber optic is because when you're going underneath the ground, the radio waves can't get back to the operator, especially if they make bends, and they're going to lose video as well as telemetry connecting to their controller. Now, when it comes to a fiber optic drone, perhaps a bomber one, is that they can come in, drop a mine, something with a delayed fuse or whatever, and then come back out if they are a really skilled pilot. That way they retrieve the drone, they drop the mine, it explodes, destroys the steel door that's certainly there, and then they just repeat that process until they get through all the steel doors and until they're inside the main area of the insurgents hiding inside the tunnels and then burst with a kamikaze or maybe another mine. That's the best way that I can think of. And the other big thing you'd have to have if you are using a fiber optic cable FPV inside the tunnels is that you would need guards on your drone. So these ones have propeller guards. This makes it so that if I bump into a wall, it's not gonna go and break the props, it's not gonna destabilize. There's something called angle mode on this because it has a gyro inside the flight controller, which makes it so that if you bump into something, it can self-stabilize and it's not gonna just roll over and, drone's on the ground now. Having prop guards is all they need. I bought a set of 4 prop guards for this little thing for like 10 bucks because I broke one of them. So it really doesn't matter. And you can do it with a bombing one or a kamikaze. Under $1,000. Now the question you're probably having, obviously, is why aren't the militaries doing that then? Why haven't they adopted this? They've known about it for a year now. And I've got an answer for that. I think militaries are embarrassed at how little these things cost, maybe how unprofessional it seems to be using FPVs. They think, oh, it's just for the poor people. I sincerely think that's what it is. They're stuck in their own ways. I've heard this from active service members right now, and it scares me. I know that they want to utilize at least reconnaissance drones like Mavics and stuff, but FPVs, I don't think they're going to be seen until a war happens and the soldier has to go to the command and say, give me FPV parts, we need to hit these guys with FPVs. We need a low-cost, effective way to go and hit a target precisely at our own means. We don't want to have to call up the Air Force in order to bring up a Reaper, a $10 million Reaper to come by and get shot down by air defense. We need a precise munition right now. And if it's a contested airspace, it makes it even harder. So look, I think that the militaries want to stick to their own ways. I think they're going to look at the squad, the infantry squad, as a 12, 13-man squad with 3 fire teams of 4 people and 1 squad leader, and it's got a machine gunner, it's got a grenadier. Maybe they'll incorporate some sort of drone operator in there, I hope. But they need FPVs. They need them. This is the only way that war tunnels can be defeated, in my opinion. Look at the Israeli military, backed by the US, backed by everybody. They were not able to defeat them. And yes, they were using drones. They were using FPVs. I have evidence for that. I know that they were. But fiber optic drones, they've known about this. I bet you could use them in tunnels very effectively. And we all know that the Hamas fighters were hiding in them. So yeah, since we're on the topic of FPVs, let's talk about this guy. $230 to go and buy it. Bought a $30 servo, the camera mount, because it's partly for videography. And this guy can do pretty much anything. That video that I put on my channel, I was able to, within 30 minutes, do 20 drops on a target that was about 50 meters away. And I did 20 drops in 30 minutes. I was dropping 500-gram balloons, and it was highly effective. I could have had more training, but I was just testing different bombing techniques. I think the threat that the military has is the industrial complex. I don't know so much about that stuff, but I do know one thing is that they don't want to look like the poor guy in the block. They want to have really Gucci stuff, but war is not wanting Gucci stuff anymore. They're wanting tons of people on the battlefield to be able to place precision munitions without air superiority. And that's what everybody's doing nowadays. So that's the biggest threat to the Western militaries right now, as you can see. What the militaries around the world are doing right now is just sending these expensive drones and expensive jets to go and bomb individual targets or maybe large groups of people. It does a great job. It eliminates a lot of fighters, but having that constant surveillance is just not something that anybody likes. I think we know that from even in the USA, where people don't want to be surveyed unless it's the Patriot Act. And the end result is obviously a lot more fighters for Hamas. And what about the insurgents hiding inside the war tunnels? If I knew fiber optic drones were being widely used, going inside the tunnels and doing that, I would just put up more steel doors. Maybe I would have like a guard in front of each section of that tunnel waiting for that FPV drone, and once they detonate on that steel door, maybe put a curtain. Put some layered curtains so that way it gets caught up in it. I think that's one way to deal with it. That's certainly how we did it in Ukraine when we had the little dugouts. And we curved our trenches and put multiple layers of these drone stoppers, just curtains. That was enough for it. So when it comes to these fiber optic drones, I don't think it would be too far-fetched to say that the US military can't get itself attached into it. Yes, AI is a great thing. It's a great invention. I don't think it needs to be utilized in every single piece of technology going forward. The TOW missile has been used since the 60s, since the Vietnam War, to great effectiveness, and it's still being used today to go and take out the latest tanks. But when you look at the price of it, it doesn't come close to an FPV, which has 10 times the range that missile. Plus, you can stop and go. So to have individual kamikaze drones be piloted by somebody who knows exactly where the enemy is. And it doesn't take too much time for a pilot to learn how to go and use these kamikaze drones effectively. So I bet AI will be the future for a lot of these kamikaze drones, but we're talking about tunnels here. How do we defeat the tunnels? Fiber optic FPVs, or I'll even say ground vehicles. But the problem with ground vehicles is that sandbags can stop most of them, and the fighters inside the tunnels can kind of just throw anything inside the doorway to go and block the tracks of this vehicle coming in. So I think flight is needed, especially with the ups and downs of the tunnels. Sometimes it's staircases like 400 feet deep. I've been in them before. It's not easy. So TOW missiles can't do it. Tracked vehicles can't do most of it. It needs to be an FPV piloted. If you want to win a war, you can't just do it with JDAMs and all this expensive equipment and just patrolling the streets. They're living underground. Throughout this entire war, they have not been able to go into certain sections of Gaza. They have not been able to because of ambushes, because of mines, because of people popping out of tunnels. So anyway, I've got no skin in this game. This isn't something, it's not political. But what I do want to say is that you should be taking this serious. FPV drones with fiber optics and war tunnels are something that the military they don't know how to go and deal with it. Maybe there's some technology, maybe they're taking it seriously behind the scenes, maybe there's something I don't know. But as of right now, it looks like nobody really knows how to deal with them. $500 billion, I don't know how many munitions and how much money was spent to go and get rid of Hamas. But it didn't work. And that's all I want to say. Drones are here to stay, and you gotta find out how to go and deal with them. War tunnels the same. I've known about this, and there it is, right in front of your face. War tunnels are impossible to defeat. Unless you use fiber optics, but I don't think they'll do it. They don't have the balls to be poor.